Okay, we have 5 January 16th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And before the meeting is formally called to order, we technically do not have anybody in a position up here to call a meeting to order, so I'm going to turn it over to our city attorney, Wallace Tremble.
Former Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, the first order of business is to elect a substitute presiding officer for purposes of electing a chair and a vice chair. That is allowed under your P&Z rules, Chapter 2, Section 2, to elect a substitute presiding officer, and it merely requires a majority vote. So the floor is now open for nominations for presiding officer for election purposes. Anyone have a...
Mr. Chairman, I would nominate Fred Faith as the chairman.
Are there any other nominations?
I'll be happy to second that.
All right, any other nominations? Just by show of hands, everyone in favor? All right.
You're our presiding officer for the purposes of elections.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain motions for chair for this coming year.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that Bob King, I'm very happy with what he's done the last couple, since I've been on the board. I'd make a motion we re-elect Bob King.
Is there a second?
I would second that.
We have ballots here that we're supposed to use this for this.
Well, I'm going to nominate Vice Chairman Hine. He expressed an interest in help to begin with, so I will also nominate Randy Hine.
Okay. Any more nominees? So I declare the close. So please cast your ballot. Wallace, you're going to count these?
There's a lot to count.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to announce that Bob King is your chairperson.
Thank you. Can I turn this over to him now?
Is he not still
Back
the...
on docket.
And now if you can take over for the nomination for vice chair.
Okay, with that, thank you, Commissioner Feth. I would entertain a motion for nominations for vice chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to nominate Randy Hine for vice chairman.
Okay.
I'll be happy to second that.
Okay, motion for Randy Hine by Commissioner Frank, seconded by Commissioner Winkler. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, I'll close the elections and we'll go informal, and just by unanimous consent, Commissioner Hine is again our vice chair. So with that, I will now formally call the meeting to order. I would state that if your commissioners please remember to turn your microphones on. As City Councilman Hopkins would say, love your mic when you talk. I remind those in the audience that we have the planning and zoning policies and statements in the agenda are available in the lobby if you haven't already seen it. And if you could please put your cell phone on mute or vibrate, it would be appreciated. I remind those, if you're not familiar with planning and zoning, that our commission only considers evidence about any case as it relates to existing law. We cannot make or change planning or zoning laws, regulations, policies, or guidelines, and we are under the authority of the City Council. With that, I'd also note that we have in attendance tonight Craig Collins and Dee Hardy with the Planning and Zoning Office. From the City Attorney's Office, we have Wallace Trembeth. We have 6 of our 7 commissioners present. Commissioner Hine is unable to attend tonight. We have our Community Development Director, Liz Becker, here. Our City Council liaison, Bob Hopkins, and then several of you folks who I'm sure we'll hear from later. We finished with the election of officers. Next item on our agenda, I would call for approval of our December 19, 2019 minutes as presented.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Frank.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner Frank. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Feth. Are there any corrections or additions? Seeing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With the exception of Commissioner Ani, who's abstained, all others vote aye. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. We have 5 items on our agenda tonight. I'll take them in order as they show on the agenda. PLN 1939S is a carryover from our December meeting, which was continued for an amendment to amend the Centennial Hills PUD guidelines. We have 4 other items relating to vacating and replatting. And with that, we'll start with PLN 19039S. PLN, I'd also remind the audience that it takes 4 affirmative votes by our rules to carry any motion, not just a simple majority of those of us present. Anything less than 4 votes would be considered a denial. The applicants can postpone their public hearing until next month in anticipation of a complete commission if they so desire. PLN 1939S is a petition to amend the Centennial Hills Planned Unit Development Guidelines to create a new commercial development and architectural standards to regulate the development of Centennial Hills Village Business Park, number 3, 10.18 acres, located between Wyoming Boulevard and Heathrow Avenue, south of Centennial Court and north of Centennial Hills Drive, Centennial Village Drive, the applicant being 1030 Partners LLC. Mr. Collins, do we have a staff report?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
before we begin, I would like to just announce that I am a member of the Centennial Hills Homeowners Association, but I have no financial record of no financial activity whatsoever about it, so I plan on voting on this.
Thank you for that.
I did inform on the advice of the city attorney.
Thank you. Thank you for that input. With that, I would ask for a staff report, Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 1030 LLC has submitted the proposed revisions to the overall PUD guidelines for the Centennial Hills Village Edition. The original PUD guidelines were approved in 2003 and have been updated 7 previous times, most recently in 2014. Pursuant to Section 1752-130 of the Municipal Code, major alterations to the PUD development guidelines require the approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. Major alterations are described in the code as those that change the use, intent, rearrangement of lots, and realignment of major circulation patterns, density levels, or open space. Prior renditions of the PUD guidelines have always identified areas within the PUD that would be developed commercially, but have never created the necessary development standards for those commercial areas. Instead, previous development regulations have focused solely on the residential development, with the understanding that prior to any commercial development occurring, the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council will be required to review and approve those commercial standards. There's been recent interest in developing 10 acres more or less located between Wyoming Boulevard and Heathrow Avenue. In prior renditions of the PUD guidelines, the area has always been identified for commercial development, which is shown on page 9 of the approved guidelines. The majority of the new commercial guidelines can be found under Section J, Commercial Guidelines, starting on page 25. This section lays out the overall development objective along with the specific guidelines for commercial development. The section goes on to list 41 permitted uses that will be allowed in the commercial area, allowable building heights, minimum setbacks, lot size requirements, and minimum landscaping and buffering standards. On page 30 of the guidelines, the applicant provides architectural standards that will apply to the commercial development, as well as general site design requirements that address lighting, pedestrian amenities, and infrastructure and signage. Starting on what would be page 33, the applicant has provided high-quality color exhibits to assist with a visualization of the written standards, as well as provide a preliminary site plan design for the area. In reviewing the amendments to the Centennial Hills PUD guidelines, the Commission should consider the proposal in context with how it addresses the intent of the PUD, Section 1752.010, and findings A through L required under Section 1752.020 of the Municipal Code, listed under your Code Compliance section in your staff report. It is staff's understanding that the applicant has been working in cooperation with the Centennial Hills Village Homeowners Association to develop the PUD guidelines. Staff has not included any recommended conditions. We've not received any written comments from the surrounding neighborhood, and we have 6 exhibits to enter into the record. A is the site plan application, B, vicinity map, C, site plan, D, public notice, E, notice of public hearing sent to property owners within 300 feet, and F is the memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Exhibits A through F are accepted for the record. I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 1939S. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and other applicable laws. I would ask individuals who address the commission to approach the lectern, identify yourself, and please state your address. Would the person or persons representing case PLN 1939S please come forward and explain the application? And if you could be cognizant of being sure you speak into the microphone, even though we can hear you fine in here, sometimes it doesn't get picked up in the audio system unless you're speaking right in. So if you could do that, it'd be appreciated.
Absolutely. All right. I understand I have about 5 minutes. Is that correct?
That's, yes, approximate. That would, if you could keep it at that or under it, would be appreciated.
Perfect. I'm Sean McCool, and along with my business partner, Dave Gallup, we're the ones that are interested in developing this 10 acres. And thank you, first of all, for being here tonight and listening to this proposal. I'm going to give you a quick, brief overview of what we're looking at. The first 2 buildings that will go into this area will be the Jump Craze building. We own Jump Craze, and we're going to move it from Evansville into this area. The Jump Craze building will be a 30,000 square foot building. 20,000 square feet of it will go to Jump Craze exclusively. There will be 6 1,800 square foot units that will be for additional rental space. What we're looking to put into those areas would be a neighborhood restaurant, something like an Eggington's or a Smash Burger, something of that nature. We'd love to have a coffee shop on the one end cap. There are 3 other rental spaces in there. What would work great in there would be like a fitness center, something like an Orange Theory or a Fit 45, something of that nature. Also along then on the corner of the property, there's going to be a gas station that's going in on that location. The one thing I'll say about the service station going in there is it'll be built to the level of the community. And I say that just to say this, that it's going to be a nice looking service station that'll fit well into the community and the community standards. I want to say, like, as Dave and I, this has been a bit of a labor of love for us, and we've been working on it for quite a while. And when we began on it, it was brought to our attention that, well, just to be honest, we've heard a few horror stories about people developing commercial property in this area. We heard some horror stories about when the Loaf and Jug went in years ago. I used to work at Casper Orthopedics when Casper Orthopedics went in on the hill. And there was they were met with some resistance. They were met with people that didn't know what was going on and how it was going to affect their lifestyle, how it was going to affect traffic patterns. And from that, Dave and I, from when we first got involved with this project, we met with everybody that we possibly could, from Craig Collins at the city, to the CEPI engineers, to every neighbor that we know that lives in the area. I met with the HOA several times, Joe Toops with the Homeowners Association. I met with the schools, Centennial and Summit Elementary, and I gave them all the information that I possibly could. about this project and ask for feedback from all of them to try and help develop this plan in a way that is going to complement the lifestyle in the community and not take from it. I'm going to give you 3 quick things that resulted in. First of all, a lot of people in the area are concerned about the congestion on the streets and the traffic. They're worried about emergency services being able to get into that area. And from that, what we've done is we've designed this entire 10 acres to primarily be accessed from Centennial Village Drive and Centennial Court. We're trying to minimize as much as we possibly can anybody accessing our property from the neighborhoods where it's already congested. So we have one access from Heathrow Avenue, and that's where just kind of that natural extension where Dartford Court enters our property. That's the only access from the neighborhoods. Everything else should be coming from Centennial Court and Centennial Village Drive. So that's one thing that we kind of took from the professionals and the people in the area. The second thing that you'll notice is there is a significant amount of buffering between our property and Heathrow Avenue. All of that green space is going to be a large berm with shrubs and trees and grass on it. Some people suggested maybe a wall along there. The problem with the wall is, first of all, honestly, it's a bit unattractive, and then it's also a safety issue when you have kids that may be running out past the wall into the street. So from law enforcement standpoint, people thought that was maybe not a great idea. So what we're doing is we're going to do that berm, natural landscaping, green space. The people that live along Heathrow Avenue will have a better view looking out their windows than what they've had for the last 20 years looking at a vacant lot. The third thing that was brought to our attention and that we've addressed is the lighting. People are concerned about bright lights into their houses at night. And all of our lights along the whole property are all from the gas station all the way down to the very end. They're focused down, almost like a spotlight right onto the parking lot in that area. There's no light pollution past our property into the road, into the homes across there. So those are just three things that we kind of took from reaching out to people that know a little bit better than us and the people that live in the area. And the other thing, Dave and I, as we've been working on this, the other 3 things that we kept in mind throughout this process is first safety, and that kind of goes back to making sure that our access points to our property are not from the neighborhood. But that even goes to like our pedestrian park or walkways throughout the area. So we always kept safety in mind. The second thing that we kept in mind was convenience. And again, that comes to the point that we're not trying to alter the lifestyle in a negative way for anybody that lives in this area. We're trying to enhance it. When I talk about convenience, we have 2 schools that are very close to this area. And right now, those kids that go to that school, they walk home 5 days a week, and they probably sit in front of the TV and they play video games for 2 hours. What we'd love to see is 5 nights a week that they walk home. We'd like to see 2 of them, they walk over to jump craze and get their heart rate up and get some exercise for a little while. We'd like to see the people that live in this neighborhood on Saturday, the mom and dad and the kids ride a bicycle over to our building and they have breakfast together right there. We'd love to see for the mom and dad when they leave for work in the morning to be able to drive in, go through or drive up and get a fresh cup of coffee before they jump on Wyoming Boulevard and head out to work. So we're looking to enhance the lifestyle of this area and make it even a more popular place to live instead of anything that would be negative. The third thing that we kept in mind throughout this process was quality. And so Dave and I, as we've been working on this for coming up to a year now, in Billings, in Denver, in Centura, in Idaho, every time we see a building that we think has a great look, a great style, that has a nice outdoor space, we're taking pictures of it and we're sending it to ourselves, to each other, we're sending it to our architect to try and put something together that's going to be of the highest quality, that again will complement this area and be built to the level of the homes in that area. And that's kind of how we started this process, and that's our vision for this area in a nutshell. I'd be happy to, if you have any questions, I have some feedback from the schools that I'd be happy to share with you, or any other questions that you have. Dave or either one would be happy to answer them at the end.
Okay, and your last name was McCool, did you say?
McCool, yes.
McCool, okay.
MCCOUL.
Okay, questions from the commission for Mr.
Chairman,
McCool?
I have a question.
Commissioner Frank.
I'm assuming the schools that you've spoken to are Kelly Walsh and Verta James?
Is Summit Elementary, it's just a couple.
Oh, okay, that's right.
And then
Oh,
Centennial.
I forgot about
So
those.
Brian, and I've been lucky because I have kids at Summit, I have
Mm-hmm.
kids at Centennial, and I have kids at Kelly Walsh, so.
I like the buffering between the homes and Wyoming Boulevard too. It will kind of reduce some of that noise that travels
I hope so.
hopefully through there too.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Wingeder.
Yes, Mr. LaCour, how big of a buffer are you talking about as far as, is it 4 foot, 3 foot, or
I
what
think
are
we're
you talking about?
Bill, can you help me with that? The height of the buffer? Bill is with CEPI.
CEPI, 6080 Enterprise. Right now, we don't have anything designed right now, but that's kind of what we've been talking about, is about, possibly a 3-foot mound, and then plus the bushes and the trees and whatever.
On top of the buffer?
Right.
Okay,
So,
okay.
so it'll come up, and of course, Heathrow is up even higher than what the site is.
Yeah.
And so that'll be up higher, and that'll be even more
Okay.
additional buffer.
Another question, there was an old pipeline that ran through that area. Now, is that dug up or is that not in use? Are you folks gonna dig it up if it's not dug up or what?
That section of that conical pipeline has been abandoned.
Yeah.
It's not been removed from the site, but it's been abandoned by Conoco, so, depending on where it's at and where it lands in the, with the buildings and everything, it may have to be removed, and disposed of.
But there's no law or anything that says it has to be removed or what?
No. According to Conoco, it's been flushed and cleaned out and capped off. And so it's not a requirement.
How deep is that pipeline?
We don't know yet. We haven't.
You have no idea or anything?
I'm-
So for a foundation or something like
What
that?
we've seen further east of here, when we've worked around that old abandoned pipeline, it's been 3 to 4 feet deep.
Okay.
typically.
So this whole site plan, it could be under construction for several years as you rent out the buildings, other than your immediate building.
Right, there's two areas that we would like to start this spring and summer, and that's gonna be the jump craze, that's kind of that first section, that larger building, and then the service station on the very corner. The other two lots at the more north end, those, it would be a great restaurant pad for one of them, and the other one maybe office building, or some storefront there. But those will be the last areas to be developed, and that's actually where that abandoned pipeline goes through, those last two areas.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further questions for Mr. McCool from Commissioner Davis?
Since it's going to be a commercial area, you're going to have some large delivery trucks coming in and out of there.
Yeah, there will be delivery trucks coming in, and I meant to even mention this when I was talking, but again, even the delivery trucks, say even like the service station on the side, this parking lot and the entire structure are designed so like a fuel truck can come in on Centennial Village Drive, turn into that property, loop around and exit without ever touching Heathrow Avenue or Heathrow Avenue at all. So our service trucks, if they're on the residential streets, it's gonna be out for that first 100, 150 feet from Wyoming Boulevard to that first entrance.
That's your primary access and for any commercial vehicle, we
Yeah.
might say.
Any commercial vehicle, and then as far as jump crates and the other buildings, all the deliveries will be behind the building, and then they'll exit back out that way on Centennial Village Drive.
The curb cut that you're coming off, then they have to be a little wider off of there to accommodate the larger vehicle.
I don't think that it does, because we've done the drawings and they've actually taken the model with the software like at CEPI to be able to show a fuel truck, which would be the largest thing that would ever come in, being able to come in all the way around the property and exit with that curb cut the way it is.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further questions from the commission for Mr. McCool? Thank you, appreciate it. As required by state law, we will invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor of case PLN 1939S? Seeing none, is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition to case PLN 1939S?
Yeah, I'm Dean Brennan, and I do have some concerns about it. I live at 2501 Waterford Street, and as I look at the drawings and stuff, I think they've done an excellent job of planning and everything, with the exception of, I think they need to widen the exits and entrances, and he talks about a delivery truck, a big semi, and not going to be able to get in and out of this as it is. Now, I know this is not the complete set of plans, and I know that after you go ahead and get it set down in black and white.
If you could speak into the microphone, it'd be appreciated.
Then okay, I'm sorry. I do think that, and also fire apparatus. Our fire apparatus has gotten larger as time goes on. I'm a retired firefighter, and I know darn good and well that some of those entrances and exits are not wide enough to allow the fire truck to get through when there's another vehicle in the entrance or exit. Also, I think that they're dumping a lot of traffic out on Heathrow, so I think this would be an opportune time to widen Heathrow to allow a better flow of traffic. Also, I would suggest that at the entrance and exits, that they ought to get those trees out of there. I know that they are beautiful and they are going to absorb carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, and they're also going to provide a buffer. But they are also an obstruction for people entering and leaving the area. I guess that was my main topic that I would like to address, and maybe we can talk later. Yes, sir. Okay. And this is Kim, and she has a few things she wants to say, I think.
Yep, very similar to yours, some of them. My name is Kim Hirschman, and I reside at 1322 Heathrow Avenue. I'm farther down to the north end of the project. I'm also on the board for Centennial Hills. In addition to the things that we have heard this evening, I think some of the importance in this is our exits in the morning. Once you have Summit and Centennial exiting out in the mornings at the same time, we have a lot of congestion in those three that you can see up there on that board. My thoughts, and this has been the board's concerns, and I know it's people in Centennial Hills. It is a very large homeowners association, one of the largest up there. We have concerns that we do need more exits, and I would propose or question if we could utilize some of their direct exits to go onto Wyoming Boulevard, because it would really decrease that congestion that we currently are experiencing in the neighborhood. And that seems to be some of the majority of the concern that we have heard. If that could be, I think, part of it. Otherwise, the majority of us welcome. I think it's good for the community and good for that area.
Mr. McCool, this is a little bit out of line, but I am going to ask you if you would be willing to respond to those immediate concerns right now, rather than us pursue them from a commission standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did talk to the highway department about doing another exit onto Wyoming Boulevard, and that is not an option that they're willing to entertain at this time. So they do not want another stoplight or another entrance on and off of Wyoming Boulevard between the Centennial Village Drive and the Centennial Hills. I think it is 15th as it comes across. So they would rather not have that. And as far as the landscaping, I mean, certainly it may be wise around the exits to scale back some of the taller shrubs and trees. Because then without it, we could run into the same problem that we had with a fence where kids can run out into it. As far as the width of the entrances to get delivery trucks in, that may be,
We can take a look at that.
yeah, and make sure, because it's obviously easier to do that now than later, but just to confirm that they are wide enough to get vehicles in and out.
Okay.
Did
So
I address everything that was?
what I'm hearing then is that the individuals who express concerns aren't necessarily against the concept, but there's some of the details of your proposal that they'd like to be included in your dialogue and perhaps your further designs. Am I hearing that correctly? Okay. All right. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to case PLN 1939S?
Hi.
Hello.
Charmaine Reed, 2782 Boots Drive. And I'm actually here for agenda item number 3, which is in the neighborhood. But I saw this on the agenda, and I regularly walk and run past this area, so I know it well. I agree with your statement that I'm not opposed to the idea. It's a PUD, and that's how it was set up. And developing the rules that are going to govern the commercial development makes sense. What I would like to see is that the buffer B, the buffer along Heathrow, be the Class C, with the wall. And I take issue with walls being ugly. It depends on the wall. And I think it's important up there, especially because of the wind. What I see is just the commercial trash, debris, whatever, that just ends up out in the parking lot or wherever, getting blown into the neighborhood. Again, this matters to me because I do walk in that area, and I pick up tons of litter already, and so I just think a wall would be nice. I think kids running out, that being a danger, I think that can be addressed by just having the wall be a little shorter, and not go to the very end. And that's it. I just like buffer Class C.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to PLN 1939S? There be no others to speak for or against this case, I now declare the public hearing closed and would entertain a motion to either approve the conditions, to approve or approve with conditions, to deny or to table the site plan as proposed.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wingeter.
I would move that we approve the conditions with the concerns of the neighbors that talked tonight. But I think it's going to add a lot to the area. I don't think there's anything else really you could do with that land. I think it's there for commercial purposes. But I am concerned about the neighbors and what their concerns were, so I would hope you'd take that into account. So I'll move to
Okay.
for the motion.
Okay, and are you making a condition as attached to your motion that, and I may have been taking this out of context, but that you expect or request a dialogue with the neighbors to address the concerns that they're hearing tonight and perhaps anything else that may come up, or is that?
Well, yes, I would leave it up to the developer and his engineering staff, or not your staff, but your engineer out there to take concerns of the neighbors. And as far as the trees, I think trees are necessary. I don't know. Do you have anything, Craig, you want to say about the height of the trees or anything like that?
Mr. Chairman, it's difficult. We create one issue by trying to solve another, and it's difficult to say which, obviously we're not going to create a safety hazard, and I would agree with the applicants that we're going to scale back the landscaping around the entrances and exits and the pedestrian ways and things like that where there aren't safety issues. If landscaping is sufficiently thick enough, I can tell you from my experience, landscaping catches debris a lot better than a lot of fences. The fences seem to just blow it right over the top and it keeps on going. So unless it's like a cyclone or a chain link fence seems to catch, but that's not very aesthetic. So it's difficult to balance, and I'm open to whatever the commission thinks.
I guess I shouldn't ask that question until later, when it's open for, I made a motion to approve, so.
Okay, and before asking for a second, I would ask our city attorney if you're comfortable with the vagueness that I feel like I introduced into the motion, or if you see something that needs to be done to firm it up a little better.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, with this particular item where we're putting actual standards in place, attaching an ambiguous condition about a meeting that is supposed to happen would probably be better left to a site plan discussion at a later time.
That's what I sensed as I got into
that
it.
motion, if the motion needs to address whether or not the findings in your staff report A through L are included or not.
Okay. With those comments, I'm going to withdraw my recommended amendment to your motion. And if you're comfortable with that, I think we know where this, what's being proposed and what's being said and what our limitations are. So if you're comfortable with the original motion to approve the site plan as presented, then I'll ask for a second.
With the hope that you address the neighbors' concerns.
Okay.
So,
The neighbors' findings. And
so that's my motion,
okay, and that the
with the findings.
the plan addresses and supports the findings that are presented in staff report. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Commissioner Davis. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Frank.
I guess I don't quite understand the motion. So the motion is to approve, but take into account what was said tonight. And so that's what we're going to send to City Council to pass, is that we are going to approve this, but I mean,
Okay, that's,
yeah, I'm concerned about that motion.
okay. Well, maybe I should make a motion to approve.
Well, we have one on the floor already.
Yeah, but we're open for discussion now, right?
Right.
Okay. But I would hope you folks would go through a planner's office, and Craig, well, naturally, you're gonna watch over and think about, and maybe see if we need a wider exit and an entrance, and
There's more steps, Mr. Chairman, that'll be required before this is developable. One of those steps will be likely a traffic study, which will look at turning motions and things like that.
so I'll just leave my motion as it is.
Okay. Does that address your concerns?
No,
Mr.
I
Frank?
can't vote for a motion like that has that. Your motion said you're going to take into account that
Okay, I'll withdraw that and make a motion to approve the site plan.
Okay, are you comfortable with that as a
Second
second?
over me.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Commission, yes,
if I may
Please.
suggest the motion that I think you are looking for. A motion to approve and pass with a due pass recommendation to City Council with the findings listed in your staff report.
Findings, of course.
Is that what you're
Yes.
after, Mr.
with the
I think that's where we were
that's what I'm looking for.
hoping to get for.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
Maybe not loud enough.
All right, further discussion.
Commissioner King.
Commissioner Onni.
Question for staff. Did we require a pedestrian walkway on the Centennial Hills property that was that we did last year? Was there
Which Centennial?
it was around the corner of Wyoming Boulevard, Centennial, on the north side of Centennial Hills Drive. And I'm pretty sure there was a pedestrian walkway on that property.
Along Wyoming Boulevard?
Yes, ma'am.
I can't remember.
And I didn't really realize that until now, so I'm looking at the site and I see that there's no There's no walkway in the.
Along Wyoming Boulevard.
Correct.
Yep. That, absolutely, as the area is subdivided, that's something that we would ask for with the subdivision agreement. But, if we wanted to include that as part of the PUD as well, I think that's a good idea.
And the other question, I guess, is just to clarify, site plans will address line of sight and width of egress and exit.
Correct. Yeah, this is a much nicer preliminary site plan than we're used to seeing, and we're getting a little deep in the weeds, honestly.
Mr. Chairman, I have one other question.
Commissioner Wingeter.
For the planner, it gets awful windy in that area, and I'm sure in here someplace, I didn't find it, is there about erosion control, how to control the dirt? And, I mean, as
That's a good question.
buildings are under construction.
Mr. Chairman, with erosion control, that is codified in the municipal code. So that is something that's required on all projects over 1 acre in size. So yes, that'll be addressed. Prior to getting a building permit, they're required to provide a bond, 10 cents per square foot. And they're also required to provide a plan and show us where they're going to put their erosion control measures and how they're going to do that erosion control. So it is well covered just by the municipal code.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion that's in front of us? Which is to approve the site plan based on the findings that are in staff report.
Mr. Chairman, I would, if there's a additional recommendation, we would need to include that as well for the sidewalk that Mr. Ani brought up.
Okay, I would ask Commissioner Ani if you would want to propose that as a condition.
I think so. I think the Centennial Hills property had that, and I think that's important with these big streets. So I would add that condition.
May I ask a question about that?
Absolutely.
So so you're talking about a sidewalk between our property and Wyoming Boulevard? Where does that terminate then? Where does that go?
I guess in my mind, it would be to the property line.
And it's a bit of a concern I have. First of all, I mean, it's behind our buildings. It's where we have shipping and receiving coming in and that kind of stuff. And it's a bit of a sidewalk to nowhere because it would go all along the end of our property and then it would end at Domino's basically. So I'm not sure. In the previous plans, there was never a walkway along there. I knew it was in the neighborhood. But it basically, so we would have people kind of behind our buildings where we don't necessarily want the public hanging out or milling around. So it could be a bit of an issue. It could be a bit of an issue for our employees as they exit at night. And it doesn't go anywhere. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
I understand the not going anywhere piece. I think we have a walkway along Wyoming Boulevard to Centennial Hills. That property.
I believe
that
it
we
ends at
approved
15th, maybe?
Has the Centennial, that one ends at 15th, so is that where it just dead ends?
Correct, but that's not the forever dead end. As properties develop, we either get them on the hook for immediate construction or future construction. So that's consistent all the way around Wyoming Boulevard. We do that.
So what would happen between Loaf and Jug and their property?
At some point, the city would direct them. It's in our municipal code that the city engineer can direct them to build that sidewalk. So that just, at whatever point that makes sense, that's when it would happen.
I mean, obviously it is a.
This may be the straw that broke the camel's back, per se, to get them to build the sidewalk adjacent. So sidewalks are required along all city streets. Those sidewalks are probably already in place that they would have had to pay for along the adjacent streets to the east and north and south. So this is not unreasonable in my opinion.
It is, I mean, obviously it is, if it were a sidewalk to nowhere, that's a big expense for.
No, we have a side path plan the city's done several years ago that there's going to be a sidewalk all the way around Wyoming Boulevard eventually.
Some of the concern that we have on that yet is the fact that trying to get a sidewalk in that existing development there behind Domino's and the like. They also have a delivery road behind there. They would end up having to knock down their berm, take out a bunch of trees and everything to put a sidewalk in. There is already a sidewalk from Wyoming Boulevard down 21st Street all the way along Heathrow and down Centennial Hills Drive. There's already a sidewalk around 3 sides of this property. And as part of this site plan, as you may have seen in some of the other exhibits, we have designated pedestrian ways from these facilities out towards the residential area, where the people, the people that would be using them would live. So putting a sidewalk, like Mr. McCool said, behind the buildings is where the deliveries are at and things of that sort. Typically don't want just pedestrians, the general public in those back areas.
And I understand that concern. I guess the other concern I have is watching people walk down some of our busy highways without a sidewalk. And so I guess there's going to be more and more of that traffic on Wyoming Boulevard as we progress and continue developing. So that's my concern. The black line represents a highway right away?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe the black line, yeah,
More or less?
just behind the buildings there.
Yeah.
That's the highway right away.
Okay.
And YDOT will typically does not want sidewalks out in there right away. They don't want the pedestrians out there.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wingeter.
I walk my dog a lot, and along Wyoming Boulevard between 12th Street and 15th Street, then I turn back up. And I think there's plenty of asphalt they could walk in between those, in front of those buildings. It's very dangerous walking next to a highway like that. I've been splashed, and it's very dangerous.
Okay, I guess in order to kind of keep some order, I would, before we address further discussions, I would ask if there's a second to Commissioner Ronnie's motion to add a condition of the sidewalk to the original motion. So first, as I understand it, we would need to vote on whether or not to amend the motion to add the sidewalk. And so I'm going to ask for a
Commissioner
second.
King, I'm not sure that I want to push that issue based on the site plan and the fact that I'd be worried about that being a sidewalk to nowhere.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I can also tell you, it's going to be a code requirement as well. Sidewalks are required along all streets, so staff is going to ask for that when it's subdivided. So
Okay.
it's going to be done.
Okay, so with that, I think we've addressed that issue for now. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve the site plan with the findings that are addressed in staff report? Hearing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members of the commission voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Now moving on to the second item on our agenda, PLN 2001RZ is a petition to vacate and replat Garden Creek Square Edition as Garden Creek Square Edition number 2, comprising 7.49 acres more or less, and request for rezoning from PUD, Planned Unit Development, to R4 High Density Residential, generally located at the northwest intersection of Kaufman Avenue and Southwest Boulevard. The applicant being JGV LLC. And again, I would remind the applicant that it takes 4 affirmative votes to carry any motion, not just a simple majority. And anything less than 4 votes would be considered a denial. Do we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application has been made to vacate and replat the Garden Creek Square Edition to create the Garden Creek Square Edition number 2, comprising 7.49 acres more or less. The plat is vacating the Garden Creek Square subdivision and creating a new two-lot subdivision in its place. Existing land uses in the immediate area include multifamily residential, single-family residential, commercial, and park and open space. In a companion item, a request has been made to rezone the proposed Lot 1 of the subdivision from PUD, Planned Unit Development, to R4 High-Density Residential. Proposed Lot 2 is Zone C2 and will remain to be zoned as is. The September 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting approved a rezone of the proposed Lot 2 from PUD to C2, which was also supported and approved by the City Council. The purpose of that zone change was to facilitate the development of a 49-unit multifamily senior housing project on the property. The site plan for the senior housing project has been submitted to the city and is under review. As a PUD, the original Garden Creek Plaza site plan from 1999 laid out the Garden Creek Square addition for the development of a 7-unit multi-tenant commercial building and 18 attached single-family residential homes. The plan was never implemented. The purpose of the proposed vacation and replat and zone change is to rescind the previous development plan and layout of the property and to create a single lot, Lot 1, that a future developer can design according to their own vision. Section 1712-170 of the Municipal Code requires that staff review zoning applications in context with the approved comprehensive land use plan and provide a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council as to how the zone change is either supported or not supported. The remainder of the staff report provides the applicable elements for the Commission's review, and I'm not going to go through those individually. Staff did not recommend any conditions. There were no written public comments submitted, and there are 7 exhibits, which are A, the replat application, B, vicinity map, C, copy of the plat, D, petition for a zone change, E, legal notice, F, notice of public hearing sent to property owners, and G, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Exhibits A through G are accepted for the record. I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 2001RZ. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and other applicable laws. I would ask any individuals who come forward to please address the commission to approach the lectern, identify yourself, and please state your address. Would the person or persons representing case PLN 2001RZ please come forward and explain the application?
Bill Farringer with CEPI, 6080 Enterprise Drive, here representing the owner at this point. With the approval of the zone change and then the subsequent approval of the site plan for the senior housing project that's going on in that southwest corner there, the owner of the rest of the parcel decided that they wanted to rescind and just kind of wipe the slate clean from what they appeared to be a great plan back in the late 90s, and just wanted to start with a clean slate. And so that's why we're in front of you tonight to just ask for the approval of this replat, to open it up and get rid of the PUD requirements and open it up and make it more marketable to another developer. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Farringer from the commission? Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
As required by state law, we will invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of case PLN 2001RZ? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to PLN 2001RZ? There being no others to speak for or against, I now declare the public hearing closed and advise that the replat and the zone change will be voted on separately. I would now entertain a motion to approve and to forward to council the due pass recommendation to deny or to table case PLN 2001RZ regarding the replat.
I move Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the replatted and the zoning thereof, and forward to the same to the city council with
Okay, motion by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that motion.
Commissioner Frank, further discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote regarding the replat.
With all
And please
members,
record the vote.
all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay, now I would entertain a motion to approve and forward to council a due pass recommendation to deny or to table case PLN 2001RZ regarding the rezoning.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Frank.
I would move to approve the rezoning of the Garden Creek Square addition and forward to commission to the city council for approval.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Frank, seconded by Commissioner Wingeter. Further discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay, moving on to the third item on our public agenda. Case PLN 2002RZ is a petition to vacate and replat the Cambridge Edition as Kensington Heights Edition Number 1, comprising 52.795 acres more or less, and request for rezoning from PUD to R2, generally located east of the intersection of Southeast Boulevard and Country Club Road, the applicant being 402 LLC. Do we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 402 LLC has applied to vacate and replat the Cambridge Edition to create the Kensington Heights Edition Number 1, comprising 53 acres more or less. The Cambridge Edition is a sub-area of the Centennial Hills PUD that was approved by City Council in 2003, which originally encompassed approximately 250 acres. Over time, the Centennial Hills PUD has undergone several revisions and at present time encompasses approximately 229 acres, in that a portion of the PUD was rezoned and removed from the PUD in the mid-2000s to create the Meadowview Estate subdivisions. The proposed rezoning component of this proposal is meant to do similar and remove this 53 acres from the PUD in order to facilitate the development of the area as a standard single-family residential subdivision. The Centennial Hills PUD introduced several new planning concepts to Casper, such as allowing for the construction of much narrower streets than the city allows in non-PUD areas. The developer as well as the city have recognized that although well-intentioned to slow traffic and create a more pedestrian-friendly neighborhood, the narrow streets don't function well because of difficulties in enforcing no parking zones as well as difficulties posed by drifting snow. Non-functional streets are obviously a public safety hazard. The rezone of the property to R2 will mandate that the project be developed in compliance with the standard city development requirements, including maximum block lengths, access, and larger street sections. The Cambridge Edition laid out a total of 125 residential lots in addition to the creation of several open space tracts, which are a requirement of PUD zoning. The developer estimates that under R2 zoning, the total number of lots that will be created once completed will be in the range of 150. The applicant is proposing to phase the project and at this time is platting 25 buildable single-family lots in several tracts. Proposed Tract A is a large 40-acre parcel that will be subdivided to create additional developable lots at some point in the future. Access to the first phase of Kensington Heights will be from Country Club Road on the south and from Drayton Way on the west. Section 1712-170 of the Municipal Code requires that staff review zoning applications in context with the approved comprehensive land use plan and provide a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council as to how the zone change is either supported or not. The remainder of the staff report provides those applicable elements for the Commission's review. There are no recommended conditions of approval, and staff has not received any written public comments on this case. There are 7 exhibits that I'd like to enter into the record. A is the replat application. B, vicinity map. C, copy of the plat. D, petition for a zone change. E, legal notice. F, notice of public hearing sent to property owners. And G, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Exhibits A through G are accepted for the record. I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 2002RZ. The hearing again will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and any other applicable laws. I would ask the individuals who address the commission, as a reminder, to step forward, use the microphone, identify yourself, and please state your address. Would the person or persons representing case PLN 2002RZ please come forward and explain the application?
Good evening, Bill Farringer, 6080 Enterprise Drive, representing the owner and the developer for this project. Staff report had explained or laid out very well the concerns and the issues with the original plat that went in a few years ago under the Cambridge edition, and with the narrow streets and the traffic and whatever. So the owners now are looking to take that out of the PUD so that we don't have to follow those guidelines at this point. This will be a standalone subdivision, and just kind of like so just get back to the standard citywide city streets widths and traffic, and so this is the first step in what we hope is going to be very interesting and developable property here. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions for Mr. Farringer from the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wingeder.
I have just a concern. I have no problem with the layout here, but I'm sure you've been up on going up the mountain where you see the Becker development where they have that stone fence all the way around. Well, I noticed some of these lots, and I know these lots probably won't be sold for some time now, but the backyards actually face Wyoming Boulevard. And I would think it would look kind of classy to have a fence all the way from Country Club on down to, well, from 21st or Centennial Drive. Okay. Well, from Centennial down to Country Club. You know, one long fence like they've done on the, you know, the Beckers did on the mountain, or not on the mountain, but on the way. Because I would hate to have a backyard facing Wyoming Boulevard, you know. And instead of having all these wood fences, different kinds of wood fences, I'd think it'd look very classy if you had one large fence all the way down, like they did on the road to the mountain. Now, I know it's not in here, but I just wanted to point that out.
At this time, you know, what will happen is that as these first 25 lots sell, they'll
Sure.
do another replat for more lots and keep progressing out. And right now, we don't have any lots along Wyoming Boulevard. You know, what you're suggesting is very expensive to put up a fence like that.
And I know it's years down the road before you start selling those lots.
So we can present it to the owner, but I'm not sure that that the owner or the developer will be interested in trying to.
Well, it's just a thought, you know.
I totally understand. You're right, it's a great idea, and we'll see where it goes.
Thank you.
Further questions for Mr. Farringer from the commission? Thank you. As again is required by state law, we will invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of case PLN 2002RZ? Seeing none, is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition to case PLN 2002RZ?
Hi, I'm Charmaine Reed, 2782 Booths Drive. My house is right adjacent to this phase of the PUD. I guess I have a question first, if you would allow. I think Mr. Farringer said something about the lots, selling the lots on the subject property. Have some lots been sold on that property?
I would note that, as I understand Mr. Farringer, he's nodding a negative on that. Am I interpreting your
I'm sorry.
response correctly?
No, at this time, no lots have been sold. As you see the plat up here now, there, no lots have been sold in there at this time.
And then if I may, have you done anything on that parcel?
If both of you could be a little closer to the mic, it'd be appreciated.
No, right now, this right here is as far as we've gone, with the laying out of these lots. No work has been done yet.
I think one of the key things so I'm not optimistic, I'm just gonna, tell you that because, streets are narrow and you want things to be safe. But as a homeowner and who bought a property that abuts the next phase of a PUD, it seems like I should be able to rely on that becoming a PUD and not being changed so that the density of the housing increases and the open space disappears. I don't remember the phase numbers, but let's say I'm in phase 4 and this is phase 6. I think that makes a difference with the PUD. I saw agenda item number 2, you just rezoned a PUD. And so I realized that it's done. I guess I'm wondering, what's the point of doing a phase PUD if you can bail before it's completed? So for that reason, I don't think the developer and the owner should be allowed to get rid of this phase of the PUD. With regards to the streets, in our neighborhood, the streets are narrow and there are problems, but the problems are made worse because of the signage and that there's no paint. Had the side where people aren't supposed to park, had it been painted yellow to help people understand this whole side, don't park, that would be helpful. And then the signs, they say no parking. It doesn't say no parking here or no parking to the end of to the corner. It just says no parking. And so that's ambiguous. I think if the developer would have done better with painting the no parking side and unambiguous signs, that would have helped some. And so I think the safety issues could be dealt with, and I'm asking that you just leave phase whatever of this PUD as it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might
Commissioner
address.
Frank.
Let me address your painting the sidewalks yellow or the curbs yellow. I live in a neighborhood where we have really terrible traffic, and they have painted them yellow. And I can tell you from experience, nobody cares. They park in front of the yellow, they park so you can't see around the corner when you're coming. Nobody cares. And you can't get it enforced unless you call to get the city to enforce it. They don't have the people, the manpower to run around and ticket people like that. So while it sounds like a great idea, the general opinion of the yellow curb is that if you just need to jump in there for a second, it's okay to park there. But then at second becomes a night, and then it becomes a week, and then so I don't know that painting that would have helped at all. The narrow, I think that the rezoning of this is going to widen the streets in this area. That was my understanding of it. Rather than having the narrow streets that you're experiencing, these are going to be wider in this area, so they won't have the congestion in this area. And so the parking probably won't flow out onto Boots or Heathrow.
I understand that.
Okay.
They want the wider streets, and that's why they want to rezone. I just don't like that they can rezone something that had been recorded that's part of a phased project, and what they recorded is meaningless. So that's frustrating. I think especially since it's phased, they should have to work with what they agreed to. And to the extent they need to make the streets a little wider, take it out of their lots. I mean, they could come up with something. Adding density, I don't think is reasonable.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak in opposition to case PLN 2002RZ? Yes, ma'am.
Hello again. Kim Hirschman, 1322 Heathrow, and I'm in the Centennial Hills HOA, also on the board. In regards to this, once again, we come back with adding another addition into that area with no appropriate exits, those narrow streets, and trying to exit the neighborhood. The other thing is, if they do remove the PUD, the concern is what type of housing is going in there, what size, how many units, and the average price of that housing. Also, I agree with Mr. Terry Wingerter in regards to something that looks a little classy, to keep that looking the same as the rest of the neighborhoods, possibly fencing something to divide that Wyoming Boulevard area from the actual housing areas. Once again, we still have we're going to increase with we already mentioned the previous one that they were petitioning for to add the businesses. I think that looked, we were in agreement with that. So we have those two new neighborhoods going in with no further exits onto Wyoming Boulevard. So there's a lot of concern there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak in opposition to case PLN 2002RZ? With there being no others to speak for or against these cases, I now declare the public hearing closed and would advise that the replat and the zone change will be voted on separately. I would now entertain a motion to approve and forward to council a due pass recommendation to deny or to table case PLN 2002RZ regarding the replat.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Frank.
I would move to approve the replat and forward to council with the due pass recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Davis. Discussion.
I have a question for this.
Commissioner Davis.
The streets in here meet the city standards. There's not going to be the narrow streets. Is that correct?
Correct. That's one of the major reasons for doing this, is to move away from that. The narrow streets are a requirement under the PUD, and they would like to build wider streets for safety reasons.
Thank you.
Further discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Frank.
Craig, may I ask, is the density then that they're building here going to be more than what was there under the PUD? Is it significantly more?
Mr. Chairman, it depends on your definition of significant. As stated in the summary of the staff report, the total number of lots in the Cambridge edition, as it's currently platted, is 125, and they're estimating that they're going to end up with about 150, so 25 more.
So are the lots, they all exceed the minimum lot size for a single family home?
Correct. They're all R2. They're all single family. They're all sized, I would say, in average R2 size. You can look at the plat and see that they're approximately the same size as the lots in the area to the east. So that would be a good indicator of the size of the homes as well.
Further questions or discussion from Commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
I'm
Wingerter.
certainly in favor of it, but I would hope in the future we'd talk about a fence down the road, because I know it's going to be a long time probably before they get to those lots bordering Wyoming Boulevard. But down the road, I would hope.
And Craig, is it my understanding that there are still avenues that have to be addressed, or issues, procedures that have to be addressed, that could be covered at one of the later stages?
One of the, Mr. Chairman, yes, we'll review plats at that time. However, there's nothing in the city code that mandates a certain type of fence over another. So I'm not sure that that would be agreeable to mandate that they do a certain type of fence. I think it's probably likely, as you see all along Wyoming Boulevard, that people are going to put up their own fences. And in some cases, developers have incorporated very nice kind of unified fencing along those corridors, but that's certainly not a requirement that the city can impose.
Thank you.
And that's what I was interested in, is a unified fence. And I know it's not in the city, but how, well, we can talk about it after this. We'll talk about it at the end of the meeting.
Any further discussion from the commission?
Chairman King?
Commissioner Longy?
I guess I am concerned about the, somebody comes in and purchases property and plans their life based around a planned development and that is kind of, that rug is kind of ripped out from underneath them. That would certainly be concerning to me. And I guess if there were, some opportunity to compromise, to have a transition that made it feel the same way, for the people who were purchased within those, within the last phase, I don't know, I guess I feel like I might feel a little bit, taken advantage of too in that situation.
Okay, thank you. Further comments or questions? Okay, the motion in front of us is to approve and to forward to council a due pass recommendation regarding the replat. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With the exception of Commissioner Ani, who's voted no, all other members voted aye, and the motion passes.
I would now entertain a motion to approve and forward to council a due pass recommendation to deny or to table case PLN 2002RZ regarding the zoning. Is there a motion regarding the zoning?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Ani. Discussion. Hearing none, please cast your vote.
With the exception of Commissioner Ani, who voted no, all other members voted yes, and the motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, just for the information of all members present, we'll hear PLN 200203R, and then I'm going to take a 5-minute recess before we hear the last one on our agenda. So there will be a 5-minute recess after this next one. PLN 2003R is a petition to plat a new subdivision of a portion of the west half of the southwest quarter of Section 1, Township 33 North, Range 79 West, as now cap addition comprising 8.031 acres more or less, located at 349 North Walsh Drive. The applicant being Northwest Community Action Programs of Wyoming, now cap Incorporated. Do we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. NowCap has applied to plat a new subdivision comprising 8 acres more or less located at 349 North Walsh Drive. The property is unplatted and currently occupied by the NowCap facilities. The pending sale of a portion of the property necessitates that the property now be platted and subdivided. The proposed NowCap addition is creating 2 lots, of which proposed Lot 1 will be retained by NowCap, and Lot 2 with its existing structure will be sold. The property is zoned C4 highway business, and the proposed layout meets all minimum requirements of the C4 district. Staff has not included any recommended conditions, and we have no public comments. Mr. Chairman, there are 6 exhibits. A is the replat application, B, vicinity map, C, copy of the plat, D, legal notice, E, notice of public hearing sent to property owners, and F, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you. And exhibits A through F are accepted for the record. I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 2003R. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and other applicable laws. I would ask the individuals who address the commission again to approach the lectern, identify yourself, and state your address. Would the person or persons representing case PLN 2003R please come forward and explain the application?
My name is Justin Stearns. I'm with WLC Engineering. We put the plat together for the NowCap addition. And as the staff report laid out, essentially we're going to be platting an unplatted piece of property that is already, as you can see, fully developed with buildings and parking lot. They intend to do this and create two lots. Lot 1 will be retained by NowCap to operate as it does now, and they have the intent to sell Lot 2 with the existing building. That's essentially what will be done here, so any questions?
Questions for Mr. Stearns from the commission?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner
Again,
Winger.
sir, you said you have no, they have no idea what you're gonna do with Lot 2, or it's just an investment, or?
I am not aware of what Lot 2 will be
Okay.
used for.
No further questions. Thank you. As required by state law, we will invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to any public hearings. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of case PLN 2003R? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to case PLN 2003R? There being no others to speak for or against the case, I now declare the public hearing closed and would entertain a motion to approve and forward a due pass recommendation to the City Council to deny or to table case PLN 2003R, the replat.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we approve.
Commissioner Wingeter, motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Feth. Discussion. Hearing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess and we'll convene by the clock on the wall at 7:25. Thank you.
We hanging in there?
Lost my.
On the square footage of the house. See, that's.
Okay. Thank you. Is this the last item on the agenda, Bob?
Pardon?
This is the next to last one is the,
Yeah, this is the
big one. Okay.
Yeah, so how's that gonna be different than the fences on the other side?
check. They just came to us. It runs long. I'm gonna make it deep.
That's a good idea.
Oh, it still happens today. You're talking about.
I haven't seen any problem with that.
You're talking about one area where they've done it. Okay. And have you turned that extraordinarily expensive.
I know what you're saying, but I just think, I've always been interested in what is all I'm saying is full class instead of just one.
Like they did with the extra. And so now all of a sudden they're worried about so the streets are there, and not worried about when they built it.
Well, I wasn't here.
She moved in there. When I moved into the island, they weren't narrow streets, and they could. It looks like, you can't get around, and people park, honest to God.
I live
And the sidewalks is supposed to connect all the neighborhoods? Yeah, like, unless you're in my neighborhood. And the only houses that don't have sidewalks in front of them are the million dollar.
You don't want sidewalks, Susan?
We don't have sidewalks in the neighborhood. No, you can't walk out of our neighborhood.
Why not?
Because there aren't sidewalks. You can walk on the street.
Yeah, that's, I don't know.
And it's not, and I don't live on you know, people drive in there to take their kids to Fort Casper School on a continual basis. So that street is very busy, but there's no sidewalks to walk down. Other than where we forced the guy who put in that new subdivision to build sidewalks, and he didn't go all the way where he was supposed to go. He stopped before he got to the corner.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But I can see, you don't want sidewalks butted up to Wyoming.
I disagree with that. I actually think you do. I watch people walk down CY
You look at my computer, man.
all the time. They need to have somewhere to walk. They need to have some, it's the same thing.
I don't know what I did, but I can't get off of this.
They're detached. I mean, those sidewalks are detached out there. They should really be a highway right-of-way issue. Probably.
Okay.
I still like my continuing.
I haven't quite worked out in my head what they're changing their zoning to now. As far as
Okay.
the,
Sorry.
type of structure
I was
they're proposing versus-
up, flip it up, and I got one to go back, and it did
Yes,
that.
I don't fully understand it either. Hoping that there's
Yeah, I did. I could do, okay.
clarification here, because even reading all the documents.
All right, I got it all right here, so I didn't
Yeah,
lose
to me,
anything.
it
But
feels like if it's similar as, similar to what it was, I don't maybe see a huge issue, but maybe it's not what it is. I don't know.
Everybody good to go?
I'm ready.
That was just a preliminary call back to order until our city attorney shows up, then it'll be formal.
He left town.
Moving faster than I thought. For me, or? Oh. Me too. But I do depend on you.
Okay, well, now back in session. The last item on our public agenda is PLN 2004RZ. And again, I would remind the applicants that it takes 4 affirmative votes to carry any motion, not just a majority of those commission members present. And anything less than 4 votes is a denial. The applicants can postpone their public hearing until next month in anticipation of a full commission, if they so desire. PLN 2004RZ is a petition to vacate and replat a portion of Tract F and all of Tract G, H, and lots 1 through 32 of Greenway Park 2 as Greenway Park 3 addition, and request for rezoning from entirely PUD planned unit development to PUD planned unit development for Lot 1, Block 6, and R3, 1 to 4 unit residential for Blocks 1 and 5, and R2, 1 unit residential for Blocks 2, 3, and 4. The said subdivision is located generally north of East 21st Street and east of Missouri Avenue. The applicant being Preserve Casper LLC. And do we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Preserve Casper LLC has applied to vacate and replat the remaining undeveloped third phase of the Greenway Park PUD and to rezone the area to remove it from the 59-acre Greenway Park PUD. The Greenway Park PUD, also known as the Preserve, is located north of East 21st Street and east of Missouri Avenue. Subsequent to the initial approval of the Greenway Park PUD in 2008, the Phase 1 site plan was approved in 2009, and the Phase 2 site plan was approved in 2012. The first two phases of the PUD consist of multifamily apartment buildings, and the final phase was designed as a transition from apartments on the west to single-family residential on the east side of the project. The original PUD presented a concept for Phase 3, which the developer referred to at the time as mansion homes. Mansion homes were described as a multifamily structure consisting of 3 dwelling units and constructed to appear as a large single-family residential structure. Additionally, the original PUD also provided for 2 to 6 unit, 2-story townhomes in the final phase. To address the transition of more intense land uses to the existing single-family homes to the east of Greenway Park, the PUD originally designed a landscape buffer separation along the eastern edge of the development, directly adjacent to the Rustic Ridge single-family residential development. The PUD also specified that only single-family residential dwellings would be located in that area. The municipal code allows for a maximum residential density of 24 dwelling units per acre for planned unit developments, which would have allowed up to 1,400 dwelling units to be constructed in Greenway Park. Although 1,400 dwelling units would have been allowed, the developer requested and obtained approval of 429 dwelling units. Out of the 429 total dwelling units, the first 2 phases consists of 368 dwelling units, leaving 61 dwelling units remaining for the development. This proposal, if approved, will create 54 lots, fewer than what is now permitted. Of those 54 dwelling units, 35 will be zoned R2 and 22 will be zoned R3. The applicant plans to develop the R3 lots as attached single-family residential units, otherwise commonly referred to as twin homes. The lot sizes of all the proposed lots in Greenway Park 3 exceed the city's minimum lot size requirement of 4,000 square feet in both the R2 and R3 zoning districts. Maximum block lengths comply with the city's regulations, with the exception of the areas where existing structures and homes prevent the extension of streets. The municipal code does allow for exceptions to block length standards in those instances. Section 1712-170 of the municipal code requires staff review zoning applications in the context of the approved comprehensive land use plan and provide a recommendation to Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council as to how the zone change is either supported or not. And the remainder of your staff report provides applicable elements of the comprehensive land use plan for the Commission's review, along with the approved uses in the R2 and R3 zoning districts. Mr. Chairman, I have 14 exhibits to enter, which I'll do when I get done here. I have 6 letters of opposition that staff has handed out to the Planning Commission, and staff has not included any recommended conditions of approval. Exhibits are A, replat application, B, vicinity map, C, copy of the plat, D, petition for a zone change, E, legal notice, F, notice of public hearing sent to property owners, G, public comment from 1940 Rustic Drive, H, public comment from 1916 Rustic Drive, I, public comment from 1936 Rustic Drive, J, public comment from Rustic Ridge Homeowners Association Board of Directors, K, public comment from Paul and Heidi Wilhelm, 1922 Rustic Drive, L, public comment from 1928 Rustic Drive, M, memo to the chairman and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and N, which I handed out just before the meeting, is a public comment from 1926 Rustic Drive. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Exhibits A through N are accepted for the record. I now declare the public hearing open for consideration of case PLN 2004RZ. The hearing again will be conducted in accordance with state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and any other applicable laws. I would ask the individuals who address the commission to please step forward to the microphone, identify yourself, and please state your address. Would the person or persons representing case PLN 2004RZ come forward and explain the application?
Bill Fahringer with CEPI, 6080 Enterprise Drive. So, again, the staff report laid out the plan very well. The owner, who's from out of town and couldn't make it tonight, would like to replat this area with these lots in here. And as it was explained, the far western tier of these proposed lots are zoned R3 to accommodate for some possible multifamily, some twin homes and stuff along that side, kind of a transition from the main apartment complex to the twin homes to single-family homes. As we move further to the east, the area is going to be zoned all R2, which is the same single-family zoning as the areas to the east and to the north of this. So the zoning requirements are going to be very similar, which will mean that the homes and everything in these areas will be very similar to the existing homes that are surrounding it right now. And so this is just a better layout for the owner. It makes better use of his land, and that's the reason that he's looking to put this in right now. I know from reading the staff report and some of the letters that were submitted to the city, there's concern about the height of some of these homes in here, being able to look in the backyards of some of the neighboring homes. If you've been out there and looked at this land, or this ground here, most of this area here is quite a bit lower than the neighboring subdivision to the east. I've got an exhibit here that shows some of the existing elevations being anywhere from, some of them are only about 5 feet lower, but some of them are almost 20 feet lower from the existing homes to the east down to about where the street level would be, running down along these proposed lots. And so there's quite a bit of elevation difference between this proposed subdivision and the existing subdivision to the east. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. If you have any other questions, I would be happy to address them.
Just a procedural question for staff and our attorney. Does the exhibits that we just witnessed, do those need to be entered, or were they were not included in your list of exhibits? I don't believe the
Mr. Chairman,
photographs.
they were just available for the meeting. They were not meant to be legal exhibits.
Okay, so we don't need to really treat them as exhibits, or do we?
Mr. Chairman, that's your call. If you want those to be part of the permanent record, then those need to be entered as exhibits. I would recommend, it takes almost nothing to do, to mark it and put it in as an exhibit.
I would feel more comfortable if the photographs that we're seeing now were part of the exhibit. So I would request that those be marked and added to our approved submitted exhibits.
I'm not quite sure how to mark them, Mr. Chairman. I'll have to work on that while you guys are discussing. Those are on the computer.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that those could all be called Exhibit N, as a photographic record is also being made as we speak, printed later and added and marked
Okay, and we'll do that.
as Exhibit
Oh.
O.
Okay. With that, I'll accept Exhibit O for the record. All right, questions for Mr. Farrier from the commission? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, as required by state law, we will invite people to comment in favor of or in opposition to all public hearings. And I'll take a note out of our city council procedure that if you could limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, I think we'll try to stick with that and try not to duplicate any previous speakers that have come before you. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor of case PLN 2004RZ? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to case PLN 2004RZ?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name's Paul Wilhelm. I live at 1922 Rustic Drive. I think we all agree that we do all have to live in a residence somewhere in this city. With that, those places are very cherished to us. They're our castle, so to speak. And when we look at the investment that people have put into the rustic subdivision, there's some definite concerns that we have with the subdivision that potentially could go in directly to the west of us. With that, I just ask for some sensitivity and concern as we go forward to make sure we're doing the right thing. Some of the things that I'd like to note, the concerns we have with the most westerly section of the people that live there obviously deals with the height of the structures that could be built. I think it can go up to almost four stories according to the current code for R2. Definitely a concern for us, having a 4-story house in back of you. The second thing would be, I'd like to clarify, I visited with Mr. Collins, but as it regards to the buffering zone, the non-disturbance buffering zone as it's written on this particular plat that is included up there, what it shows is it references on this note 6, and on that note 6, it references the east line of block 5. Block 5 is the interior twin home section. What I'd like to do is make sure we clarify that and we identify it as, if we go forward with this existing plat, block 4. So the buffering zone is from the western fence, the back end of the houses, of the single families that are there. You all have received my letter and mine and Heidi's letter. I think ultimately the very things that we're talking about, height, a buffering zone, so that we don't destroy the view that we purchased and the quality of spectacular views that we have from those ridges that are there, and would appreciate your careful attention to those items as we go forward. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wilhelm, before you leave, I am going to ask Mr. Collins if the issue regarding what Mr. Wilhelm brought up, if that needs to be addressed, or
Mr. Chairman, yes, that was addressed, I believe, with the second plat, which he may have the first plat. That was a mistake, so I don't have a zoomed-in version. I'm not sure if you can see it on yours. Maybe scroll in to see what the block number is in that note 6.
okay, I think I know what you're talking about.
Just to the right of the lot layout, there's a note section, and the last note should reference block 4, I believe. If you give me a minute, I can pull it up on a different program.
Okay, if what I'm looking at is right under the notes, I'm reading note 6 as no earth-moving activities or structures will be allowed in the non-disturbance buffering area located along the east line of block 5.
Is that, can you read the block on the, on that block? I thought it was 4, maybe it's 5.
That's the last one. Great. This is block 4 right there, so I don't have the updated one, sorry.
Yeah, this is the old one.
Okay, sorry.
So should that say block 4 or?
Whatever block that is on the,
Yeah, if I'm understanding the issue, it should read block 4 because block 5 is an interior block.
Exactly.
okay. Yeah, all right. So that was not changed on the resubmittal then?
Okay,
Yes, because it does say in block 4, non-disturbance buffering area easement. See note number 6.
Yeah, it's obviously meant to, you can see the,
east line, it should be block 5, or block 4, excuse me.
Block 4,
right,
yes.
and you can see the written description on that easement in the dark.
Okay.
Does show it on the lots themselves. The note is incorrect.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is William Bunce. I live at 1926 Rustic Court. I speak on behalf of myself and not on the HOA. To the issue of the 50-foot buffer that we just discussed, that's roughly the width of this room. If you're talking about no construction on the backside of a $500,000 to $1 million home that's been there for approximately 50 years, that's not enough. This particular project, with all due respect to the developers, could very easily decrease the value of an outstanding, long-esteemed neighborhood in the Casper area, in addition to the quality of life. We've talked about multifamily homes, we've talked about double-family homes, and essentially we're talking about duplexes and manufactured homes. Between 15th and 21st Street, this particular project, with the unknowns that we face here tonight, more than likely decrease the existing value of the homes in Rustic Ridge, as well as impede the quality of life. Quality of life as defined by aesthetics, as defined by financial value, as defined by view shed of the homes on the western side of Rustic Ridge, not to mention the traffic along 15th Street, which I'll get to in just a second. There are short-term impacts and long-term impacts. The short-term impacts are the construction of these multifamily homes, which frankly we do not need in Casper. This is not a pressing economic development issue. This is not a housing issue that we have to face right now. And until the assurances and covenants can be put into place of the type that this neighborhood hopefully can have, I would respect that you decline this or table it for future reference. Now, relative to the traffic impact, on 15th Street, there's Manor Heights Elementary School. There's already a bottleneck there in the morning and in the afternoon. If we put in another subdivision, which only has an ingress and egress on 15th or 21st, we're going to increase that bottleneck in front of Manor Heights School, which of course becomes then a safety issue. So with those impacts, I respectfully ask that you would decline this petition or table it. Thank you.
My name's Debbie Jelinek. I live at 1948 Rustic Circle. I wish I could speak as eloquently as the two gentlemen before me, but they're neighbors and they're good people and very knowledgeable. I live on the corner of 21st Street and the projected development. I get to hear the traffic from 4:30 in the morning and all night long. I get to hear the plow trucks. I moved into my home in approximately 1991. My family has been homeowners in Rustic Ridge since 1982. We pave our own roads. We provided our own jazzy fence that you recommended, Terry. We try to be good neighbors. And this developer came into our lives years ago, and they keep switching what they're going to do, what they want to do, what they want to propose. I'm concerned as a homeowner, my enjoyment of my home that I've invested a lot of money in and I maintain. My enjoyment and the valuation of my home. And so I just ask for the committee to take into account what bearing it might have on our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vicki Primrose. I live at 1916 Rustic Drive, and I'm the president of our association, our HOA. And there are 69 members in Rustic Ridge, and this project will affect every one of us. We're very concerned about what you're proposing. The west side will have the greatest impact. They'll lose their view. The large and tall vegetation that people will plant will just block their entire view. And the concerns are going to impact all of us. So we hope that you will consider not allowing this project to go forward, because it will affect all 69 of us. Plus also, as I understand, that there were some real drainage problems through that area. And the soil and the drainage problems are also going to affect who's planning to move into there. And so I would hope that you would consider all of that before you make your decision.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heidi Wilhelm. I live at 1922 Rustic Drive. My husband just spoke with you, but I have a different take on this project as well as everything that he said. I'm also vice president of the Homeowners Association, so we've had a lot of people at our house here since this notice came out. One of the things that I'm upset about is just the fact that the legal notice was not even accurate. We've got Yosemite Parkway as a street, we have Jasper Drive as a street, yet then when we pull up the plot and we get that from the city, we've got Pinion Parkway Circle now and Cloud Peak Lane. It's like, what is it? You know, are we supposed to have an accurate, this comes in the mail to this? Is this supposed to be accurate? Or is it all of us is supposed to come down here and try and figure out what exactly this developer's up to? We're not sure. We found errors just as a simple homeowner that are in the drawings that we feel like should have been corrected before presenting legally out to the rest of us as to what's going on. So that I don't have very much, what do I want to say, confidence in what's going forward with this production already. The 55-foot buffer zone, we did have another gentleman just a few doors down from me come down and get an elevation plot from the city. And we found out it was a 10-foot drop, and that's it. It's not a 20-foot like somebody has said, and I feel like, again, we're not being accurately talked to and presented. 10 feet, that is at the top of a one-story home, let alone adding a vault. If you add a vault, that could be another 10-foot on top. So clearly, it is going to be a full block of our views if this development is approved. This will be our 4th summer that we have been here, coming up this year in 2020. We bought this as our retirement home. We bought it from a guy who was 92 years old, so I told my husband, this is it. We know we can live in our 90s here. The only thing I wanted in my home was a sunset view. That was the only thing. And I'm not kidding. I was raised in Riverton on Sunset Boulevard, and that is we had sunset views every single night, and so that was the only thing I wanted as I moved into my retirement. These homes are $500,000. You had somebody mention that, up to $1 million. We've made a huge investment, and I just feel like this PUD would allow us more open space to be able to look through. Otherwise, if you approve this plan, we'll have a solid lineup of vaulted ceilings all the way across our fence. We'll miss the entire sunset, the entire city views that we relied on when we purchased this investment. If you take a look at Rustic Pines, which is over on the other side of our properties, you'll see that they did that. They put single-family houses, completely blocked that whole side of all of their sunset and city views as well. So we are asking, and that's why we have so many in attendance here, that we are upset about it, and we just ask that you do not approve this new plot for single-family homes right up against our houses. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Wilhelm, before you leave, I am going to ask staff to address the implication that Ms. Wilhelm had regarding the erroneous notice. Is that correct, or is there something that we're missing?
There's nothing erroneous about the notice, Mr. Chairman. In fact, we notified more people than we were supposed to because the outside boundary was extended farther than it needed to be. So what matters is the outside boundary. She's confused, I believe, by the previous road layout, which is in GIS, compared to the proposed road layout, which is not in GIS because it hasn't been approved. So
thank you.
There is nothing substantive about the notice that is in error.
Okay, thank you.
You do also have one of the slides that you had up there with the blue fence there. And the road that you have in there, is that your latest then? Because that's not,
This shows both the proposed layout and in the background as well as the existing layout, which is the white roads.
okay, because originally the white road was going to go up along our fence line, which we were more excited about that because we wouldn't have a vaulted ceiling butting all the way across our entire subdivision there. If you'll see, the white road would have been a better solution than what is presented there. I don't know if I explained myself better or enough, but if you were to follow that white road, that would be a better plan for us.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to case PLN 2004RZ? There being no others to speak for or against this case, I now declare the public hearing closed and advise that the replat and zone change will be voted on separately. I would entertain a motion to approve and forward to council with a due pass recommendation to deny or to table case PLN 2004RZ with respect to the replat.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Frank.
I would move to approve the replat and forward to council with the due pass recommendation.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Wingett. Discussion.
I would like to ask some questions. The PUD that's presently in force there has, exactly what was it they were going to build? Was that going to be multifamily homes there in the original? It was going to be like a 3 or 4 level apartment building kind of thing?
Correct. If you take a look at the, this is directly out of the PUD that was approved. Phase 3 is all multifamily. Phase 4 was the single family.
So we're moving the single family closer to the edge there?
Closer to the east side, yes. The issue with that roadway alignment is that the road would be located on that side hill, which would make it very difficult and expensive to construct. And it would also only have lots on one side, which of course makes it very difficult to finance a construction of a road when you only have lots on one side. So I believe that's the reason the applicant would like to move it.
So the phase 3 down there is mostly multifamily, the mansion type homes that look like, that are basically apartments.
Correct. There was mansion homes and there was also these 2 to 6 unit multifamily as well.
Further discussion? Commissioner Wingett. Mr. Farringer, if you would be so kind.
Has the developer or yourself, your own office, have you guys looked at maybe a bigger berm, not a berm, a bigger space between more than 50 feet?
Well, right now, the 55 feet buffer in there, basically pretty much runs along the base of that big cut that's there now, the bottom of that slope. And so that's why we wanted to make sure that the homes couldn't be built any further back. They can't cut that all out. They can't do anything in that area. The more the more you take out of that, then of course you're losing ground for developing. I guess I'm not sure how much more you would want. 55 feet is quite a bit, plus there's a 6 foot tall stone fence on top of that. So
Okay, and these are gonna be, the ones I've seen here are 3 stories?
We don't know what.
Those were the mansion homes,
Yeah,
right?
that was.
Those were
that
the
was old
mansion homes.
plan.
That's the
Right now,
original.
this is an R2, and we're planning, we're proposing an R2 zone. And so it's, a single-family residential home, just like what is required or zoned in the Rustic Ridge area. So it could be, single story to 3-story or whatever. Yeah, just to.
So you're asking to change the zoning to what is, the zoning is immediately east?
Mr. Chairman, let me clarify that. They're both single-family districts, however, Rustic is R1.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was an R2.
No, it's, the only difference between the two really is a 9,000 square foot lot versus a 4,000 square foot lot. However, all the new lots exceed the 9,000 square foot. They could be zoned R1 also.
I apologize for that. I thought it was R2.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Wingeder.
The homes that are proposed that I've seen, they're actually, the ones that are closest to Rustic Ridge, that's actually the end of the, the end of the homes, isn't it? I mean, the homes are gonna be going from, the proposed homes are gonna be going from east to west.
I guess I'm not following you, Mr. Winger.
Well, okay.
The homes that are, the homes that would go along that
Closest to
eastern
Rustic
tier,
Ridge, yeah.
they would be facing west. Their backyards would be facing east.
The backyards will be facing
Yeah,
east. But they're long, they're not wide.
That's right.
You mean the lots? Yeah, they're a little longer than they are wide. Yeah.
So people are gonna be looking out at their neighbor in the other
Correct.
complex.
Right.
They're not gonna be looking out
Their front,
in the backyards of Rustic Ridge is what I'm trying to say.
correct. Their front yard will be facing west, be looking across the street. Their backyards will be toward the Rustic Ridge site.
Yeah, so they're not gonna be looking into Rustic Ridge's,
Correct.
Neighbor's yard,
Correct.
is what I'm trying to get at.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I would like to also mention that the issue with note number 6, having the wrong block number on there, that was a typo on my part, and I apologize for that, but it has been corrected.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Davis and then Commissioner Wingeder.
I have a question of the planner. What is if they were to continue and not rezone it, and they developed it as to its density permitted in the PUD versus the density developed in the rezone, what would be the difference in the density?
I believe this is 7 fewer lots than what was approved with the PUD.
How many?
7 fewer. So this is less dense overall, the entire PUD.
7 lots fewer.
7 lots fewer. 7 dwelling units fewer.
Commissioner Wingeder, did you have a question
I
or
was just
comment?
wondering, Mr. Planner, was, when this whole PUD was put in originally, years ago, I don't know if he was around then.
I was.
Were you planner then? Was there any opposition to it?
It's been, it's been contentious all the way through.
What has?
It has.
Sure.
I might be a little confused, and so I'd love some clarification.
And just for the record, your name and again.
Primrose at 1916 Rustic Drive. I heard this gentleman say they could be up to 4 stories high. Is there,
If we didn't change it, the multi-units that they talked about were going to be mansion-looking multi-family homes that could be up to 4 stories, yes.
and if we prove that, they will be? I'm confused, and I think a couple others of us are.
Oh, if they approve it, then it's going to be mostly single-family and some twin homes, if I'm correct.
Is there any way to limit that it would be 1-story homes? Can you do that?
We anticipated this question, and I'm going to let Wallace kind of handle that. I believe that that's probably not going to work, but
Mr. Chairman, this comes down to the legislature's version and definition of what it means to have a zoning district. Under Wyoming Statute 15-1-601, regulations or zoning districts can differ from one district to another, but they have to remain uniform for each class. So you can't conditionally zone an R2 in this case and say that everybody else gets to build whatever's allowed in that zoning district, but these guys don't. Each district has to remain the same.
The reason I ask that is I am on the north side, and when they built Rustic Pines, and I didn't live there at the time, we were not living here, but I understand they were limited to one-level homes, so that they could not build, 3-4 stories high, and I just thought maybe that is an option here, and you're telling me it's not.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Yes.
saying that under Wyoming statutes, you can't change the zoning district by adding conditions to it like that. Now, what any private citizen could do is negotiate with the developer for their own easement, an easement for a view, and probably pay consideration for that, but we cannot conditionally zone a particular zoning district. They have to remain uniform.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Wingeter.
who can negotiate with the developer, the city or the landowners behind the project?
Individual landowners can negotiate for an easement for a view, just like they could any other kind
So
of.
the landowners can sit down with the developers and come work it out, hopefully.
Sure, they could.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, I'll allow your comment, and I'm not going to allow any further because I don't want to get in this constant dialogue issue.
No problem. In response to Commissioner Wingeter's, one of our members did talk with the developer, and as I understand it, he is planning to sell off the single families and the R3s and just do the PUD building. So right now, we have no idea who to talk to regarding that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you have anything to add?
I do, Mr. Chairman. This sounds facetious, but it really isn't. Those lots are going to be for sale, and typically we would say if you want to control the property, buy it. That's the other option.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm going to add my comment because I am in a quandary about this. Obviously the existing landowners have legitimate issues as to what they expect out of their property. The party that bought the land, I think, has some rights also, and he certainly, or the party has the right to request approval to do what he's doing. Now, whether or not it's granted is another matter, but so everybody's got something to at stake in this issue, so it makes it tough to see where we're going, and I'm still weighing the facts. But anyway, I guess I feel that the landowner has some rights also to pursue development of that property. But don't know. Further comments from the commission? Okay. We have a motion on the table that has been seconded to approve and forward to council a due pass recommendation regarding the replat of PLN 2404RZ. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With the exception of Commissioner Feth, who voted nay, all other members voted yea, and the motion passes.
Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to approve and forward to council a due pass recommendation to deny or to table case PLN 2004RZ regarding the rezone. Is there a motion regarding the rezone?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Ani. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Frank. Discussion. Hearing none, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With the exception of Commissioner Feth, who voted no, all other members voted aye, and the motion passes.
Thank you. I would note for the record that our City Council liaison, Councilman Hopkins, had to leave for another commitment. But I would also note for the record that Commissioner Bates has joined the audience as an observer, so thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
I guess, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
I'd
Frank.
like to make a comment that our recommendation here is to go to the City Council for a due pass. The City Council will make the final determination. So they could still go in front of the City Council.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, we have also on the agenda tonight two issues regarding our the new year of 2020. That would be first to select a volunteer from the commission to serve on the advisory committee for the OYD district. And in the past, we've had two representatives, Commissioner Feth and Vice Chairman Hine. I would open that up for discussion and see who wants to volunteer for that. Again, if you want to redo that, that would be great. I appreciate you. I think you've done a great job on that. So I will offer that. And I don't think we need to vote on that.
No, I think.
We're just going to do it. Am I safe with that assumption? And I'm also going to conditionally appoint Vice Chairman Hine on there also, unless he rejects it, but I think I'd like to see him on there again also, unless somebody else wants to take his place.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Okay? All right, with that, Commissioners Feth and Vice Chairman Hine will again serve on the OYD Advisory Board. And that brings up the Casper Historic Preservation Commission. As a reminder, Commissioner Wingeter has done a great job on that.
They had election of officers, and don't ask me that, I forgot to write the name.
Okay, well, let me preempt you here. Before I get your report, I want to ask if you're willing to serve for the continuing upcoming year.
I'll be happy to serve.
Or do you want? Okay, great.
I don't know if they want me or not, but I'll be happy to serve.
Well, if they don't want you, that's their problem. We want you on there, so that. And I failed to ask, I'm going to put you on hold for just a minute. I failed to ask Commissioner Feth if you had anything to report from the last OYD activities.
No, our scheduled meeting was Christmas week, so we did not hold a meeting.
Okay, so nothing. So with that, do you have anything to report from
Well, there
your?
really wasn't that much going on, other than they did elect officers, and the Alliance for the Historic Wyoming nomination, they have last year it was a Rialto Cigar Store that they put in for this nomination that's awarded by the state. And this year they're Grand Street Grocery. They brought up. I don't know if they officially decided on it. They did officially decide to put Grand Street Grocery in for the nomination. And then they also talked about signage. They call it the Wayfield Project. And they're concerned about what's going to happen to the Wells Fargo Tower. And I guess they're trying to make contact with the gentleman or gentlemen's, that bought the property and see what their plan is for the Wells Fargo Tower. And hopefully they're not going to tear it down.
We could move it somewhere.
Yeah, well, pick
Over
it
by
up,
your house,
pick it
over
up
by
and
your
move it
house.
right by, yeah. But basically that's all that happened.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Terry. And thank you for
Well, I do
re-upping
enjoy
for
it.
the year.
I don't know if I think they like me.
Everybody likes you, Terry.
Okay.
All right, Community Development Director, Ms. Liz, would you care to enlighten us with your wisdom and insight?
Good evening, Commission. I will not take too much time, but I wanted to update you on a few things that I think are relevant to your position. First of all, we continue to promote the census, which kicks off for 2020, March 12th. And I know Commissioner Frank has been a big advocate with her granddaughter.
I've been pushing my granddaughter into that bee costume. She went to skate in it,
Yes.
too.
Buzz on Ice was a little one that we were pleased to see. So we're getting the engagement out there. So thank you to you and Abby. And then Commissioner King, you are going to you've supplied some wonderful trivia questions, which we have the census being presented at Rotary, the main club on Monday, January 27th. And I know that the committee has been invited and Commissioner King has put together some fun census.
Now, you're aware that the answers are to be held confidential, and that you're, all right, well.
Is it kind of like a Jeopardy kind of thing? We could find the GOAT of the census.
Fascinating on all the census. And I bring this up because we all know that the census is relevant not only for potentially funding for our community, but also just the data that it presents that we all use in making decisions on the growth and locations of developments and what the needs are for Casper. And I know we've referred to it in not only our comprehensive plan, but most recently now even our long-range transportation plan, which I segue. I had sent out to you in December a copy of the draft for you as planning commissioners to look at, and thank you to many of you who provided comments and to Renee Hardy. That draft plan was presented at Tuesday night's council meeting. And again, the long-range transportation really is relevant to this body also with not only the projections of growth, but where they're projected for, but also looking at our street network, but also our non-pedestrian, our non-motorized access in the form of trails, as well as even sidewalks, all of our bikeways. So again, trying to get some growth out there in non-motorized opportunities. So thank you for weighing in on that, and that continues to move forward through the federal process. The Long-Range Transportation Plan updated every 4 years. We also today had interviews for another project that I think is relevant to all of you, which is our aerial mapping project. Aerial mapping project funded through the MPO is again the satellite imagery that flies across Casper and Natrona County every 3 years. We have isolated it down to 4 finalists who interviewed today. There were 11 that submitted requests, or pardon me, proposals to our requests back last month. So we did the interviews today. Those numbers are being tabulated. But again, that will update our GIS system with current data. So all of these subdivisions and these changes that you all put into place will now be again captured in better satellite imagery as we move forward. So the photos on the aerial flight will happen in May. Why? Because we're hoping that the snow's gone and the trees have not leafed out. So it's fascinating to look at that kind of technology, and they're going to fly extremely low to get better satellite imagery than ever before. So it's fascinating. It's way over my head, pardon the pun, but it's fascinating to look at how detailed we will be able to see as we are able to drill down, and the maps that Craig produces will be even better.
So we can wave at it as
yes,
it goes
we
on.
could. No, they are fabulous maps. But yeah, we can wave, and we'll tell you when the flights happen, so we can all hold up.
Run out in the front yard.
Yeah, I think you got something there. And then lastly, we're looking at our next coffee talk, and currently what has become a big ticket discussion item with our state legislature, as well as even locally, as well as even nationally, is stormwater master planning. And again, that kind of touches with you all as we begin to look at development and the need for permeable surfaces and not having a Houston, which has been elevated to a community that has not done good stormwater master planning. And our community has. We are fortunate, but we all know that these freak storms come around nowadays, and we have downpours, and what happens to that storm water? And how quickly can it be dispersed naturally into the ground or through what our infrastructure is with the city through the storm drains. So we're looking at a coffee talk with a pretty neat invited audience. And so be on the lookout for that. We're going to try to get those details still firmed up either tomorrow or Monday.
So you don't have the date set for that
No.
yet?
We had been looking at the last week of January, but we may be now looking at the first week of February. But we want to get not only our council team involved, but we're also looking at partner communities in the form of Glen Rock and Douglas and further south. A lot of our North Platte friends, as well as our elected legislators. So kind of looking at putting together something that's forward-thinking and a neat partnership for the state. So Stormwater Master Planning, be on the lookout for that invitation for coffee talk. So that's a lot. I tried to talk fast so I wouldn't keep you too much later, so.
Okay, thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
Any questions from the commission for, incidentally, if you read our rules, Liz is one of our officers. Now, I don't know if you knew that. We have a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the community development director, by our rules, is our secretary, so. Well,
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question for you.
Commissioner
I
Fett.
noticed in today's paper that the federal grant we requested for Midwest Avenue was rejected. What are the plans to go ahead now?
You know, and thank you, Commissioner Feth. I did that interview 2 days ago. We just got notification today that DOT is going to make available that build grant with applications opening next month, February, due in April. But there was such a nationwide interest in rebuilding infrastructure that the federal government is putting together an earlier round, because usually we're submitting in July and hoping that we hear in November. So they are doing a quicker turnaround. So we're thrilled. So that article's already outdated, but again, we are ramping up our former application. We will have a debrief with the Department of Transportation in Washington, D.C. either next week or the following week. Find out what we can do to improve our application and hopefully get funding for that final phase. So that is hot off the press. I did send a note to Carter so that our council members will know what's going on with that too, because this one came out of a morning conference call with our Washington, D.C. consultant. So that's exciting. Good. And we're so close, really, really close. Just need that last little bit of money, and hopefully we'll get some help from the federal government.
Liz, I have a question too, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
At one time, I know you was looking at Allendale as far as the census, bringing in more families. Evidently, you dropped that idea.
From a potential.
To bring it into the city.
Craig and our department have been tasked with identifying areas, as you all have seen reported, and we've reported to you on the annexations currently on some properties to the west, most recently South Poplar. We have another one we will have a public meeting for along Robertson Road in 2 weeks, and we'll be bringing forward that recommendation or update, I should say, to council for their ultimate decision on whether that's an area to consider for annexation, again surrounded by the city of Casper properties, basically a donut hole that we have been tasked in our department with locating. Allendale, again, was also potentially on that list. So, but we will seek direction from council on what they pursue and which areas are of interest. So we had initially put together a fairly extensive list of about 16 areas within Casper that are properties surrounded by the city properties.
When's the deadline that you have to do this to get an official count?
We had targeted the end of December. I think there's some flexibility, but that again is up to what's called LUCA, which is part of the U.S. Census boundary group. I'm trying to simplify this as far as terminology. Greg, you may remember what all those acronyms stand for. But they're the ones that identify the boundaries for our municipality and what's Casper, what's Mills, what's county, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So again, those are snapshots that they do have to cut off, and we had targeted, obviously, December 31st. And then I had called in and was put on hold for a long time to try to get a little bit more information on that from the U.S. Census, but their hotline is full.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks, Liz.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. Comments from the commission?
You want me, okay. Mr. Chairman, I was wondering, when I was talking about a uniform fence, I've always been, I'm sure like all of you, we're concerned about the aesthetics of this community. From I-25 on, and I'm not talking about a fence along I-25 now, but a road as busy as Wyoming Boulevard is, and those backyards, and you know what it looks like up in the Becker edition. You have this very nice, good-looking fence all the way around, and then across the street you have some fences that are laying over, and some fences that are, well, anyway, I don't know how you can get it on the books if the city council wants to look at this or not, but I do think a uniform fence on any new project, housing, PUD or whatever, that borders a major street such as Wyoming Boulevard. I think that'd look classy, and it's safety reasons too.
It's the same place where we want to put sidewalks. So how do you access it? We're going to have doorways through the fence?
Well, I really don't think you need just sidewalks along Wyoming Boulevard.
Okay.
I know there's some already between 12th and 15th Street, but like I said, I walk it all the time, and those trucks come by and they splash water and snow and mud and everything up on that sidewalk. And as fast as people go on Wyoming Boulevard, I don't think you need sidewalks. But a fence in a housing area that the backyards back up to Wyoming Boulevard, I think is very important. And I think a uniform fence, and I know they're expensive, you guys, but if Becker can do it, I don't know why other developers can't do it. And you know how nice it looks up there. So how can we get her done, or suggest to the city council, or what, if you all agree with me, that is.
I prefer the sidewalks.
Hmm?
I prefer the sidewalk. And a berm, maybe some vegetation, that'd be great, but I just think it's nice that people can not walk in the ditch, I guess, is my thing, so.
Yeah, I think that'd be nice if around my neighborhood, if I didn't have to walk in a ditch past houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. You got a point there. I mean, but I was thinking the Trails Parkway was gonna eventually get a trail all the way up, all the way up to Garden Falls, following Wyoming Boulevard too. That was talked about at one time.
Well, they've got a trail part way up.
For bicycles, like they did at Casper College.
The last phase is on hold right now.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, and obviously that access is, a sightseeing or recreational opportunity, not necessarily a transportation opportunity, so I guess those are kind of two different animals.
Well, anyway, think about it at least, and don't shelf it. I mean,
I think I can anticipate the discussion. They're going to hear from the development committee that would add too much to the cost of development and affect affordable housing.
And it's a great idea if, the lots that you're talking about up there, they are very expensive lots. They were expensive to start with. So they distributed that cost among all those lots, and it made them all, build a pretty good-sized house to make it worthwhile.
Well, I know it costs money, but I just thought, I think it looked nice, classy, whatever, and safety reasons. And one other thing, and I'm gonna be gone at the next historic preservation, so, could you go for me? Would you attend that? I'm gonna be on vacation.
If somebody sends me a reminder as to when and where it is, I'll make the best effort.
Well, it's the second Monday of January at 8:30.
Well, the second Monday of January is already gone.
It's February, I meant.
Okay.
Thanks for reminding me.
I do have one thing, Mr. Chairman. It struck me this evening how many comments about the lack of parking enforcement we had. From Susan to the letter to, you kind of teed me up in the thing.
Well, especially
And I
the
think,
yellow zones. And it's dangerous in my neighborhood. People parking on a corner where you can't see either way going around the corner. The street's only this wide anyway, barely big enough for a bicycle.
yeah,
So, yeah.
that's about the least complicated issue we have to address, and I find it unfathomable that we can't make that happen. And I think that actually harkens back to the long-range transportation plan, parking on sidewalks, everything else. I mean, sidewalks are our original non-motorized corridors, and to ignore those, I think is just, I think it's a little bit disturbing, frankly. But it's been that way for a long time, so it'd be really nice if we could kind of supercharge our efforts to consider everybody.
I agree, that's an area the city needs to do better. In this particular case tonight, the area we're talking about isn't an area that the HOA is actually responsible for enforcing.
Right.
That was one of the trade-offs for having the narrow roads. The council had the forethought to say, we think parking is gonna be a problem. And we're not, if you're gonna save money on the paving width of your streets, then you're gonna have to make sure you enforce that parking.
Sure.
So see, up in our area, they said, we're gonna make this a one-way street, or we could make it no parking. So all the residents got together and said, hey, we don't want a one-way, make it no parking. There's no sidewalks in front of those houses, no sidewalks around there at all, no place to park, except for everybody has a one-car garage and also the driveway in front of that one car. And they're all over the place.
Probably the worst place in town for parking.
They're all over the place, and I can call community service every frickin' day, and they can't be there every day, but it's there every day, and nobody seems to care. So it's just.
It's another PUD, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I don't know, the gal that lived on Boots that said she thought that this was how it was gonna be when she moved in, nobody told us what was happening up there when we bought the place, even though the PUD was in effect at that time. Do people actually inform them what's happening in the area before you buy a place?
If they go looking for it, I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I agree with Commissioner Ani that there is some expectation when you buy into a development of what's gonna be next to you. However, that could change. And one of the things about these PDs that I hate is when you plan out 250 acres, and it takes you 2 decades to build it out, things are gonna change. The market's gonna change, you're gonna have to adjust. And when people get locked into that first plan and are unwilling to change it, it's horrible. I mean, you end up with undeveloped land, or it's just not fair to the developer either to lock them into.
Well, they bought the land. If you wanted the view, buy the land in front of you, and you can secure the view forever.
These PUDs, to me, they tie the hands of the developer to not be able to adjust to the market. That's my biggest problem with PUDs, and especially when you get to 250 acres, which this was, you can't anticipate over the next 20 years what's going to sell, what's not going to sell.
That's my problem with what we've been talking about tonight. The PUD, it should never been assembled on the land to start with, in my opinion. It should not have been zoned, it should have been unzoned land, and leave it unplatted even. And then you do it the platting and the zoning when you have a development to take place.
Up in my neighborhood, they have a lot, about a 6,000 square foot lot with 3 houses on it. So it was a PUD, 3 houses, and then across the street are 3 different 4-unit, like between 2 and 4 unit townhomes on areas that I wouldn't have even put a house. And it's just crazy. They just smashed them all in there, and it's just horrible. Had we known that, yeah, would we have bought the house? Probably not. In fact, we bought it from the guy with the first case here, the jump craze guy. It was his house. He was smart.
The second problem with those PUDs is that, anything goes. I mean, there's no minimum standards and they're starting from scratch. And what we end up with, we're not ending up with unique development like it's supposed to be intended to encourage. What we're doing is, it's a circumvention of the city's requirements, and we end up with a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly.
It doesn't fit with the rest of the community. So I'm firmly against.
If we're gonna take in a big area like 258 acres, and we're gonna develop 20 of it or 50 of it, then fine, zone the other one agricultural. At least nothing will be on it, and you can start over again. When you get that, you take that parcel to the next parcel, and you have an orderly development.
I agree, but to expect over 20 years and think nothing will change.
Oh, it's gonna change so many times that it's,
All right, well, I just have one other quick comment too, to thank you folks for your support and endorsing me as chairman again, so thank you.
You do a bang-up
Good job.
job.
Thank you.
I would move to
adjourn.
adjourn the meeting.
I'd second.
Okay, prior to voting on that, I would note that I also wanted to make a note that Councilman Bates joined us in the audience as an observer, and just to note his presence, and thank you for showing up, coming and listening to our comments and gripes. Our next regular scheduled meeting will be Thursday, February 20th, here in council chambers at 6 p.m. And with that, the motion to adjourn, please vote. Please record the vote.
I guess Terry's going to stay, and so am I. Terry's staying. Are you staying?
Chuck.
Well, we have 4, and that's the majority, so.
I'm going to vote for Terry.